All right, guys, I'm back with another video. I'll show you guys what I'm carrying in my pocket today. That's how we usually start. So I've got my Strider SJ75 Baby Huey Ranger Green G10, just plain old satin titanium. Now it does have some interesting milling marks there if you've never seen that before. And everybody talks about stone washes and which is best. I mean, I don't know. I think that's pretty hard to beat. That hollow grind, look how reflective that is. So anyway, that is the knife that's in my pocket. Let's talk about the knife that we're here to talk about. Now, I've been asked about this knife at least 6-7 times by 6 or 7 different people. What are your thoughts on the Benchmade Super Freek? So here is the video. It took me a while because I wanted to carry the knife. I got a great price on the knife. So I definitely wanted to see what Benchmade's M4 was about, which there is one Benchmade in M4, a Freek in M4 that has been Rockwell tested if that's something you're interested in. And it was, don't quote me, go back and look at the chart. I'll leave a link down below, but I believe it was like 62, 61, something like that. So that's the Rockwell. I did cut with this knife a significant amount. If you pay attention to my Instagram page, you saw me outside. I was trimming bound up grass off of my string trimmer's shaft with this knife. I've broken down boxes. I've opened up envelopes. I've done all the things that everybody does on a daily basis. Didn't have any issues with it. Carries fine, feels fine. I did do a cardboard cutting test, which I will post around the same time as this video goes up. And you can see how shiny that blade is right there. And that's from that test. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But I got a 125.4 feet of fine edge holding, which is when I shaved all this hair off my arm. I cut until it wouldn't shave the hair off my arm anymore. Then I continued to cut until it would no longer slice 20-pound printer paper, and that was a total of 441 feet. So pretty good results there. I definitely don't have any complaints about the way the knife performed. It didn't roll on me. It didn't chip on me. It held up just fine. It stropped back just fine. This is really, for the steel type and the price I have in this, the amount of money I have in this, which is $130, I'm having a hard time to find a complaint about the knife. So if you want the short version, that's it. For $130, I have very little to complain about in the knife. For the $191 retail, and if you guys want specs and all that stuff, plenty of people have done videos on this, but if you want that, I'll leave a link down below to DLT Trading where you can see the specs, the price, all that stuff. Jump over, buy one. Great place to buy from. They don't sponsor me. Nobody sponsors me, so I'm just throwing that out there, honest opinion on a retailer. But this is the Super Freek, and for, like I said, the 130 that I have into it, it's good. Now, the issues with the knife. This one obviously is secondhand, so this is the knife I have in my hand. This is the knife that I got secondhand, so I don't know. I bought the guy from a buddy named Adam, and I don't think he would do anything to the knife. He's a great guy. So I'm not saying anything about him, but I know the initial reply or thought is, well, you never know what happened to the knife before you got it. So there is that. I don't think he did anything to the knife. I don't even think he adjusted the knife, oiled the knife, anything, but there is always that. However, when I got the knife, the first thing I noticed is this centering. And you can see there, it's clearly off. It's not even a situation of, you know, how bad is it off? Look at it a different way, this, that, and the other. It's clearly off. And the worst part about it is it's gotten more off-centered as I've used the knife. So I don't know what's up with all of that. Have not adjusted the pivot, but if you guys know about adjusting pivots and all that stuff, the tighter you make the pivot, the more the blade moves to what would be, let's see if we can get that focused, to what would be the lock side, which is this side. So tightening the pivot is not going to help. And I know the first thing you'll say is, well, why don't you loosen the pivot? I can tell you why I won't loosen the pivot, because when I got the knife, it also had, can you hear that? It has side to side play, and it has a bit of up and down. I don't know if you can hear both of those, but it has play in both directions. It's audible in person. I don't know if it's audible here, but like I said, for $130, the play is not a huge issue. The centering is not a huge issue. It does not rub or anything like that. The function of this knife has not been inhibited. And for $130 for a knife with G10 handles that feels very solid in the hand and M4 steel that has performed very well, it's hard to complain. I honestly can't complain. You can look at the coating here. It is a little bit shinier, but for the most part, it has held up. There are some marks up here on the shoulder of the knife, which is normal. There is some of the coating that wore off here, and I believe what happened there, and there are some marks up here on the shoulder as well. But I believe what happened is, as I was cutting, I think maybe I was coming in at an angle a little bit, and a lot of that friction was on one side of the blade more than the other. Also on the spine of the blade when I got it, it kind of came like some Emerson's. You can see that coating is chipped off the edge. Now, honestly, I'd rather not have it coated, so I don't really care about the coating and how it holds up. And like I said, it's a $130 knife, great steel, great overall package. I really don't care. I was going to beat on it anyway. The other negative thing that I ran into while using the knife during the cardboard cutting test is, as I gripped the knife, and sometimes I did it like this, sometimes I gripped it like that, and I can actually feel that a bit now on my finger as I hold this. My pinky right here was very sore. I would say I did the test before I went to bed. I went to bed, woke up in the morning, my finger was still pretty sore. So not the end of the world. I wasn't going to die, nothing like that. I probably cut cardboard for about 30 minutes. I usually don't use a knife for that long. So that was the only real complaint I had. The jimping wasn't too aggressive. If anything, it didn't really do anything. When I held the knife fully over here in a hammer grip, the only hot spot that eventually developed over time was right here on my pinky. The clip, you can't feel the clip. The lock, that's the main reason I don't necessarily care for Benchmades. I'm not a huge fan of this axis lock, and a lot of people have asked me about that. Why don't you like the axis lock? And I think partially what it is usually these knives are smaller. This is a fairly sizable knife, but this one is a good bit larger than the other knives that I've had. So that lock is not close to my thumb. So I have to literally put the butt of the knife in my hand and then kind of, swing the blade down like that. So with this knife, I can flick it open, put my thumb right on the stud and flick it closed. So it's very accessible. Also, and this is one thing I have not heard anyone talk about, I don't know if there's anything different about this axis lock in general, but a lot of the axis locks, I know people say, oh, you can just pull one side. I don't like that because it feels like the bar is actually shifting in there, and it kind of binds up in my experience. So with this knife, I have not noticed that. So that's another plus for the knife. I can flick it open, use it, just flick it like that, close it, no issues. It's right there. I can operate it on one side. It does not feel like it's binding. It does not feel like this bar is shifting. It's a very smooth operation. It is not drop shut, but I'm not too concerned about that. Swinging it shut is fine with me. The other reason I do not like the Omega spring is that, the other reason I do not like the axis lock is that the Omega springs sometimes break. So that is a point of weakness that you have to take into contention. Benchmade will fix it for you, but the knife is already $191. You pay $7 to send it priority shipping to Benchmade, and I don't know what they charge you to ship it back to you, but you're well in this knife over $200 at that point if they charge you anything. So at $200, I would have a hard time justifying this knife. At $130, even with these small issues that it has, it's really hard to say anything bad about this knife, guys. It performs well. It's a good size. The one thing I don't like about Griptilians, and Griptilian style knives, even the original version of this, is the thickness. This is a thick knife, and I don't remember the specs. Like I said, I'll put a link down below, but it doesn't feel fat and bulbous are the words that come to mind when I grip a Griptilian or something like that, or even the original Super Freek or Freek. But this one feels very reasonably sized. It fills your hand without feeling bulbous and fat. So it also feels a lot more rigid with these G10 handle scales here. So that's also another positive. So like I said, guys, I'm not going to keep repeating myself. If you can find one of these 150 or less, I think it's a great deal. At 150, I'm really going to kind of start to want it to be, at least with the blade play, not an issue. But for just the 191, I can't justify it, guys. I can't. You know, I'm really not buying Benchmade knives like that anyway. So really the only way I would buy them is on the secondary. But if I had to pay full retail on secondary, I would have just passed. For 150 to 130, if you can find a deal on it somewhere in that ballpark, 150, it being a little bit better fit and finish, 130 or less, you know, kind of some give and take. It's hard to beat this knife. I can't even really say anything differently about it. It's just a good worker knife. The stock is nice and thin, but with that M4 steel, you're going to get lots of good toughness. The Rockwell, which I know there's been a lot of argument about that, but the Rockwell provides you with an edge that lasts an extremely long time while providing you the toughness of the M4. It's an all-around good knife. There's no other way to say it. So I appreciate you guys watching. Here's my video. I will also link this over on my Instagram since people ask over there. Remember, a lazy man carries a dull knife.